Hi everyone, delonewolf here and welcome back to EVE Talk, your weekly look at the market in EVE Online. This is the last EVE Talk before the expansion called Onslaught is coming next week. We should see the release of that with, of course, the new flex structures, with the co-op Abyss, with new Triglavian ships. So lots of interesting stuff, but I also got some other little things that CCP is adding, like blueprint copies for Navy battleships. So obviously that's going to be our extra product this week. And yeah, lots of interesting stuff. So it's gonna be pretty busy because there's also the launch of Fallout 76, which I am planning to at least try. Let's start as always with the new Eden store. Quick look at that, but we shouldn't linger too long. All I'm seeing is some bundles, no special sales or anything like that. 30-day Omega is just a 500 plex at the moment. So yeah, what's interesting in my opinion, of course, the Angels Hex bundle does look absolutely amazing on the Angel Cartel ships, but other than that, no new skins or no super special sales or anything like that going on. So let's move on and let's get started on the market itself. As always, we start with some plex and stuff. That's going to be at 1 minute 30. Like that, and you can tell that plex has gone up in price yet again. 3,444,000 ISK in Jita. If you go to the player owned trade hubs, it's 3,330,000 ISK, so there is a bit of margin there. And for the buyers, we are at 3.3 million. On the chart, you can see the increase in price, especially on the 5-day moving average and the 20-day moving average, continuing well above 3.25 million now. So this is a nice increase in price from 2.8 million to the current price in about 3 months. Not bad, and yeah, this is definitely a pretty good trade to make. If we also take a look at last year's peak, or the peak in the last year here, we went up to 3.4 million, and that is what we are selling plex at the moment in Jita. So this is starting to, in my opinion, get pretty close to a sell opportunity, but who knows? Next week, of course, we do have the expansion. It's actually an expansion, not a patch, so CCP is really going all out for that one, trying to, I think, drum up a little bit of extra interest, a little bit of extra hype for EVE Online coming this winter. Perhaps we might see a nullsec war as well. Who knows what's in the cards, and those might be two important real life points that could actually trigger a spurt, an increased price for plex yet again. So it's pretty difficult to actually time the top, but compared to where we were last year, this is already a really nice price. But I can see two potential points where we might get even better prices. Next up, we have the multiple pilot train certificate actually going down in price a little bit. That's quite a surprise, but the volumes are down quite a bit as well here at the moment. So basically, let's say that we are stalling in the price here. 1,238,000,000 ISK for the sellers, 1,174,000,000 for the buyers. That's again a pretty narrow margin happening here. So yeah, here a stalling again, not willing to go above 1.25 billion on the chart at this point. For the skill extractors, we are bouncing off the 380 million mark and going back up from there. So sellers, okay, is that all new? Yeah, in the last 24 hours, look at that. Quite a bit coming in all of a sudden, from 380 million down to 375 million. Seeing an average price of more than 380 on the chart should mean that if we go to Jita, we're at 385.5, and it's actually still Jita that is selling more than the player-owned trade hubs apparently when it comes to these skill extractors in order to get this average price. So let's just call it 385 for the sellers. It's definitely possible. And then you've got the buyers coming in at 371. No, 367. That's a bit more margin between the sellers and the buyers. So here the market is basically hesitating and is a little bit all over the place. You've got cheaper sellers in the player-owned trade hubs, but apparently they are not too successful. You've got the most expensive sellers in Jita 4.4, and those guys are actually selling a lot of their goods, considering that the average price is above 380 million, and then the buyers, they're just in a wait and see pattern. They're keeping their prices relatively low. That's interesting, something completely different, which in my opinion could go in any direction from here. If plex is an indicator, we should go back up. If the buyers end up being right and you see all of this extra supply in the last 24 hours, we could actually see prices go back down as well. So interesting hesitation here from the market. Next up, we have the skill injectors that are still slowly trying to go back up a little bit, but not doing so quickly at all. Staying above 700 million ISK though, currently selling for 710 million ISK, buyers at 702 million for the large skill injector. Next up, we have the small skill injector. That is basically having a bit more of a wave in its price range at the moment, and in the last week or so we went back down from 150 million to 140 to 145 million, I think. So the sellers 143.6 million and the buyers are at 137 million. So here the margin has closed, and I think that this is basically the same thing that we're seeing in the large skill injectors, or was no, in the skill extractors, where the buyers are more in a wait and see pattern, and then extra supply fills in and actually drives the price back down. And so here you get that wave where there's not too many sellers, so the prices are forced back up. But then the buyers are not moving anywhere, and eventually supply comes back in. And so here, especially on that last wave, it really looked like we had potential. We went up to 150 million or close to that. But no, here the market comes in with fresh supplies, and we're back at this very slow increase in price. Just the same on the 20-day moving average, pretty much as what we see for the large scale injectors. So a bit more volatility. So potentially a bit more opportunity as well in the small scale injectors, but still very tricky, I think, to actually make a lot of risk on this. And then finally, we also have the daily alpha injector that's actually going up in price and heading for or very close to a 1-year high. If this is a full year at this point, no, not yet, but let's call it a 1-year high, because this is definitely a high point, almost 63 million on the chart. Sellers coming in at 70 million, is 69.8, and then 69.9 for the next one. Buyers at 60 million, they're forced up to a price above 60 million. That's not it's up, but not by too much. So you also see a bit of a margin opening up of almost 10 million ISK between sellers and buyers on a 60-70 million ISK item. That is more than 10%. So that's actually generally, considering the last few weeks, a pretty big margin. But we are also at really high prices. This should, to me, indicate that there are quite a few alpha characters out there that are still scaling up at the moment. Next up, we have our minerals at 8 minutes. Like that. As always, we'll start with titanium, which is getting very close to 1-year low, so definitely playing with 4.5 ISK, just like in late December last year. So here we get a nice spike in a bit of an increase in price up to 5.5, and then we managed to maintain 5 ISK after the winter here. So January, February up a little bit, I think, on a war here, also a spike on a war. So now we are back at really low prices, 1-year low prices. And the next step is, can CCP drum up enough excitement for the winter expansion, and will Nullsec actually make a move, perhaps with the new structures that could be a trigger to try and annoy your neighbors or change warfare enough so that we see more destruction. That is basically what we need for the minerals. Titanium is selling for 4.6 ISK, actually a bit of buying happening between me making the ticker and starting the recorder and the recording, and the buyers are at 427. Bit of margin opening up, so a bit of a bounce again off of 4.5 ISK, which is the same pattern we saw before. But as I've said, I do expect that we would need a Nullsec to make a move to actually see a real comeback in these prices. Now there is PvP coming in the Abyss, but I think that most people at this point fly with Navy cruisers or pirate cruisers and things like that. I don't think that we'll see a major mineral destruction coming from the Abyssal PvP at this point. Next up, we have Pyrite diving back down after making a little bit of a comeback and trying to hold on to really bad price of around 3.8 ISK. But nope, that bottom has completely fell out again. And we're back at a 1 year low point of less than 3.5, 3.4 ISK for the sellers, and 2.96 ISK for the buyers of Pyrite. Just completely gone, that demand here. And yeah, sellers still coming in here, 1.7 billion, 900 million units. That's just going to keep driving that price back down. Next up, we've got Mexalon. That's probably also going down. Yep, definitely at a 1 year low point. And so here we have 58.8 ISK. So let's call it 59 ISK for the sellers. Below 60, terrible price in my opinion, but what can you do? 52.8 for the buyers. And here I read an interesting comment on Reddit, on the EVE subreddit about this. So what is happening is that Mexalon is the big bottleneck in nullsec, and of course in Delph with the Imperium that tries to be as independent as possible, so they pour all their minerals, or as many of their minerals as possible, into their own production, but Mexalon is their bottleneck. And so what we're seeing now is that in this calmer period in EVE Online after the summer, people are just mining for Mexalon like crazy, but they are also dumping all the side products that is being basically existing as extras for their Mexalon production. They're just dumping that as quickly as possible on their local markets, and that's when you get big dumps of 2 billion units of pyrite. They're actually tanking these prices. Unfortunately, with Mexalon at 1 year low points, it does really look like either activity is down a bit or there's just zero destruction at the moment. And I think that that's basically what's happening, that there is no real demand because there is no real destruction, no need to replace fleets right away or anything like that. So 1 year low point though, perhaps an opportunity to grab some cheap Mexalon if you're a big group at the moment, but the general trend is obviously down. Here is Isogen continuing towards 15 ISK at this point. Man, this used to be such a good mineral. 15.7 for the sellers, 13.27 for the buyers, and look at the numbers here, still 200 million, 139 million, 75 million. And for Isogen, those are pretty damn big numbers because you need less Isogen generally than you need Mexalon in your production. We still have Noxium, and Noxium, alright, also perhaps some sort of a bottleneck being created there, up to 325. So this is the one that is actually holding on the best. 310 ISK for the sellers, 280.55, so 280 ISK really for the buyers. Decent margin between these two, but quite a bit of a surprise to see that this one is actually the mineral that's holding on the best so far for the year. Mexalon has done really great though, 70 ISK for Mexalon, compared to what Isogen has done, for instance, is absolutely a really good price. So has Tritanium, but both of these are at the moment at 1 year low points, unfortunately. And so Noxium is apparently somewhere a bit of a bottleneck as well, and that's managing to maintain a price of more than 300 ISK. Very surprising. I thought that after this dip down to less than 300 ISK, we would definitely start to move in the 250 to 300 range, but a bit of a comeback right there. For Zydrine, that's continuing the slow descent to 400 ISK at this point. 408 ISK for the sellers, 381 for the buyers. That is, of course, the moon mining activities in 0.5 mostly, perhaps wormhole space a little bit as well, that is creating massive supplies of Zydrine. And I think that the symptom of that that we can clearly see here is a 2.6 million, 1.4 million, 1.3 million, 7.8 million. These are the kinds of numbers that you get for a small operation on the moon, and they're just regularly bringing that in every single day. You've got orders like that, couple 100,000, 6 million, 1.5 million, 6 million, 3.3 million. It just keeps coming in, and as a result it keeps pressuring the price until at some point we'll find parity. But I think that basically it's nullsec, or it's a big war, it's loss of destruction that is going to finally trigger that bottom on a spurt up. I think that's the most likely pattern to expect. So here for Megasites, also continuing to go down in price, 424 for the sellers, 321 for the buyers. Look at that massive margin between buyers and sellers, and here again 1 million, 3 million, 1.8 million, 8 million, 3 million. There's just no buyers at the moment. Nobody needs extra megasite for their production. So you get this massive gap opening up between sellers and buyers here, and you get this constant flow, more of them. 48 hours ago, 24 hours ago, always probably 5-10 sellers. All right, time to dump, time to try and eke out the ISK for our moon. And that's what we're seeing here. Constant pressure on the price of megasite. For the final mineral, we have morphite. A tiny little comeback after dipping to 8,200 ISK. Went back up towards 9,000 ISK, but it's already on its way back down. 8,600 for the sellers. 8,000 ISK basically for the buyers. Pretty cheap. You could consider putting up a buy order again on the expectation that something will happen when it comes to destruction, and that will come back up in price in a similar manner to, let's say, the August spike or the February spike, which are related to previous wars in nullsec, of course. So yeah, that's definitely what we're dependent on here. The general vibe in minerals is oversupplied, not enough destruction, not enough demand, but many of them at 1 year low points, and it's up to you to decide. Do you consider that to be a buy opportunity? For me personally, it just means that there's little reason to do a lot of mining, and if I do any mining, I'll just keep the resources for myself and wait for a better time to sell. Next up, we have PI coming in at 1610. Yeah, okay, let's go. Here, of course, all of a sudden CCP sprung the release date, the very early release date on us. I'm not sure if that was to be expected, but yeah, coming next week already. Let's see if that has any impact, considering that the flex structures are coming. So here are the broadcast nodes. Bit of a comeback after last week, up to above 2 million ISK, but nothing too major here. 2 million basically for the sellers, 1.9 million for the buyers, back to a slightly below average price still. Next up we have the construction blocks. Here we can see a big volume spike all of a sudden, price going up but not by all that much, meaning 11,000 is pretty much for the sellers, 10,000 for the buyers. Bit of a margin opening up, and definitely a spurt in demand that has increased the price, but again, not a massive breakout or anything like that. Consumer electronics also up a little bit in price. You can again see a volume spike that probably triggered that, which means that I think at the moment we're maybe around the average. I think if we reach 13,500, almost 13,250, and the buyers at 12,500 ISK is around average, maybe still a touch below average, but not by much anymore. Next up we've got coolants actually going down in price. I think if you look at the ticker, nitrogen fuel down again, less than 20,000 ISK. That is actually really cheap, losing another 2.5%. At some point, that does mean that there's PI that needs to go down in price. It can't be that you have 1 year high points in PI and that you get fuel continuously going down to less than 20,000 ISK. So here, I think that coolants is back down pretty obviously on the chart. Holding still at a really good price, 11,100 ISK for the sellers, but the buyers are starting to drop out here, 9,800 ISK, less than 10k for the buyers of coolants. That's quite a wide margin, and so there is quite a bit of room here for coolants to start to move down a little bit. Hopefully we'll stay above average. Enriched uranium, same thing, reaching a 1 year high point of 14,000 ISK, is now hesitating a little bit here on the chart. Sellers are down to 13,990 ISK, so below 14k, and then the buyers are at 13,400, still way above average. A very good price, but the first signs that the market is starting to stabilize and will potentially go back down a bit on the fuel related PI items. And then here is a really interesting one. Here are the integrity response drones, which I have sold. I bought some for I think like 2.2 million, or was it 2.1 million? Is it still in my ticker? Yeah, I bought some for 2.1 million and I sold them now for a 3 million ISK in the course of last week. That price is back down a bit, 2.9 million for the sellers, 2.8 million for the buyers, but it looks like integrity response drones is one of the winners for the new flex structures coming next week. And here we do have a bit of a breakout, and potentially we had a really awesome trade with buys at close to or below 2.1 million ISK, and then sales close to 3 million ISK. Not bad. Mechanical parts, and so this here is you know, the lovely volatility on a CCP release here. Does look like you basically need more integrity response drones than something like broadcast nodes, and so this is where you could make your really good trades. Mechanical parts back up after going back to slightly above average price of 11,000 ISK, actually moves back up here. 11,900 for the sellers, 11,200 for the buyers. Back in a really good price range, but not a 1-year high above 12,000 ISK at this point. So again, look out. I think that there is potential considering the fuel prices for PI to go back down. Nuclear reactors, after reaching 110,000 ISK, a bit above that, is on its way back down already as well. 103,000 now for the sellers, 90,000 ISK for the buyers. That is definitely pretty cheap. If you look at 90,000 on the chart, that's actually definitely a below average buy order price. But I personally, while the volatility, the peaks are slowly going up a little bit in the price range there, I still feel like it's pretty risky, and I would love to see like a more like an 85, 86,000 ISK price range for the buyers before I say, yeah, all right, time to grab some more nuclear reactors and then try to sell them at 115, 120 if at all possible. That would be the nice volatility. It's just not happening at the moment, although it seems to be growing. Organic mortar applicators also up a little bit in the last couple of days on increased volumes, but not enough to really make a big difference. 1.1 million, a bit above that for the sellers, and a bit below 1.1 million for the buyers. So definitely a bit of a comeback on the announcement of the expansion, but nothing too major, not a massive breakout here. Robotics next. Trying to get back above 100,000 ISK, but failing, being brought back down straight away by more supply. 98,400 for the first seller. Most of them are at 99,000 ISK, and then the buyers at 93,400. I think this is still an okay price, an average price. 100,000 ISK, even historically speaking, has been the average price. So buyers are a bit below that, and we did know a nice little period here, July, August, September, with prices above 100,000 ISK, but pretty stable robotics here so far. And this downwards, this slightly below average chart here, you could say, might be helping keep fuel prices low. Self-harmonizing power cores also, you know, after reaching 2.1 million is now, I think, up a little bit in price. Sellers are at 2.3 million, buyers are at almost 2.1 million. But again, you know, bit more interest, bit more volumes, and the price is up, but nothing too great there. Superconductors, after reaching a 1-year low point of less than 11,000 ISK here, finally making a bit of a comeback. That's quite a nice violent swing. 13,000 ISK for the sellers, 11,900 for the buyers. So you can imagine that you could probably have bought some at like 10,600, 10,700 pretty easily. And then in a month later, you're selling them for 13,000 ISK. This is back to above average prices for the sellers for sure. Great time to bring them to the market, and I think I have a transport ship full of them ready to be brought to the market. Test cultures, the second winner, I would say, for the expansion announcement. So here we have less than 7,000 ISK as a bottom price, currently selling for 11,000 ISK, and we are running out of them. So that's definitely a pretty good trade that could have been made here if you bought at the right time. And finally, we are Witware mainframes. All right, also breaking out in the last couple of days, volumes up, and after reaching a 1-year low point of around 2.1 million ISK, is already selling now for 2.8 million. It's not super great trade, but it's definitely a little bit of ISK that you could have made on Witware mainframes. We'll see, perhaps the launch of the expansion itself can add to this. That is the real question, of course. So here we have Witware mainframes and the integrity response zones that have definitely made a move on the expansion announcement. We'll see if the expansion itself will cause a second rise in price, or if the market gambles correctly that these are the only two ones that might become a bit of a bottleneck, and that it calculates the price increases correctly. That is always a bit of a gamble that we have to take, of course. Next up, we have Advanced Moon Materials at 2410. like that. Let's take a look at these. So most of them came back a little bit, but nothing too major. And here crystalline carbonite in the last few days seem to be under pressure. Selling for 164, buyers are at 160. It's not the bottom price of less than 150, but it's definitely still a pretty low price. I would call it below average. A buy opportunity, well, I think that we can afford to wait to a price of less than 150 on the buyers on this. Ferrite carbide, same story, right? Reaching 150 on a couple of occasions, then working its way back up very slowly, but at the tail end here, a bit more pressure. 163 for the sellers, 153 for the buyers. That's very close to 150. If I'd have to choose, you know, ferrite carbide would be my buy over crystalline carbonite. Next up, we have titanium carbide. Here, bouncing off of 150 as well, but at the moment still respectably higher, still not at the 200, which I would put at maybe the average price. 178 for the sellers, 171 for the buyers. So this one is also like in third place when it comes to interest in buying that. And then finally we have tungsten carbide, which reached a 1-year low point as well in the last month of around 163 and did so twice, 165 let's call it, and is now also bouncing back up. 195 for the sellers, 186 for the buyers. So a bit too late for buy orders on this one. If you absolutely want an investment in advanced moon materials in the carbide section, I would look at ferrite carbide. That looks like the most interesting one. Next up we have the metamaterials, also bouncing up a little bit, so not much to say. We're definitely nowhere near 1-year low points for photonic metamaterials, and we're just basically stabilizing around 20,000 ISK here. 19,800 for the sellers, 18,800 for the buyers. Next up we have plasmonic metamaterials that after going back up to slightly above 20,000 is now on its way back down, but again stabilizing around that price range. 20,300 for the sellers, 20,250 if you want to be more precise, 19,300 for the buyers. So that's right around 20,000 ISK. Not much to say, average price here on this chart, and yeah, basically stable. Non-linear metamaterials actually breaking out a little bit. All right, so this one tried to get to 20,000 ISK and now is on its way back up, currently selling for 28,000 ISK and buyers coming in at 27,000 ISK. I think there is like a small trade that you could have made here if you bought at this bottom, but to unload at this price point here, perhaps if you need the liquid ISK, then you can definitely sell non-linear metamaterials at this price. It should be above average. And then finally we have terahertz metamaterials that know some volume increases, but not too much on the price here. Of course, we did go to 20,000 ISK and then jump back up to 22,500, but we're basically again stabilizing a bit at 22,000 for the sellers and 20,400 for the buyers. Yeah, nothing too interesting here if I'd have to make a gamble again. So far, only ferrite carbide buying seems to be on the books. Next up here, we've got fermionic condensates. Very same picture right here. So you went down to, well, maybe a bit below average or something like that. Then I jump up, but that hesitation at the tail end again. So 98,000 for the sellers and 92,000 for the buyers here. Yeah, nothing too pronounced, right? If I would want to buy, it would have to be well below 90,000 ISK considering the entire chart here. And for selling, it seems too early for that as well. Ferrogel landing at 45,000 ISK, which is right in the middle of the chart. So here we have 45,000 for the sellers, 44,500 for the buyers. Basically a nice soft landing, but nowhere near a 1-year low point either. So this you could perhaps, if you want to take that gamble and say that 50,000 ISK should be the average, 55,000 nice sell opportunity, you could try it. There might be a bit of ISK in there, but I would prefer a more pronounced bottom that really drops off like here. Like in October, we did manage to break through 45,000 without too much effort there. And yeah, the sell opportunity, of course, that's still unknown when that might happen. Fullerenes did try a couple of times, right? 881 on the chart here. That looks pretty interesting, but now we did come back up a little bit. So selling for 1,000 ISK, buyers at 950. Again, not the bottom price, not in buyer territory, but not great to sell either. Hypersynaptic fibers, same thing here, bouncing off 13,750. Currently selling for 14,600, buyers at 12,900. That is maybe a little bit more interesting, 12,900. Let's see if we can get 13k on the chart here. That is around here on the chart. Maybe hypersynaptic fibers, if you want to try to buy for less than 13,000 ISK. I think there might be a trade in that if you absolutely need to make a purchase. But not the best price that we've seen in the year, of course. Now, transmitters continue to be under pressure a little bit. That might be interesting if the buyers are at around 4,500. Yeah, a bit too high. 4,940 for the sellers, 4,740 for the buyers. There's better, right? We can see here 4,300 just on the previous dip here. So, no, that's again not on my radar for buying this week. Next up, we've got phenolic composites going down to 2,500 ISK, which is on the entire 1 year chart is probably the average. For the last 6 months is below average. Has some momentum, so 2,545 for the sellers, 2,400 for the buyers. You are buying for less than 2,500. If you look at the last 6 months, that might be a good purchase. If you look at the 6 months previous to that, it's too early to pull the trigger on that. Ceramic fibers, after reaching a 1 year low point, not bad, 389, bouncing off of that. So not yet in seller territory, but your buy opportunity is over. 452 for the sellers and 434 for the buyers here. So that's a couple of weeks ago, I think, that you could have bought these for less than 400 ISK. Seems to have been a nice opportunity, which the market spotted. Look at that volume increase, triggering the increase in price. Quite nice. But yeah, this week's advanced moon materials not too great, to be honest. If I would have to pour ISK in it, it would be in the Fernite carbides, and that's pretty much it. Next up, let's move to those stick to ships at 3110 and see if we can spot an impact from those advanced moon materials, which have like a little bit of a comeback and are stabilizing slightly above their bottoms, basically. Below average still on generally speaking. So let's see if we also see a bit of stabilization in these ships. Of course, the Ares Interceptor is a bit of a special case, but is stabilizing at less than 30 million ISK, it seems. Yeah, 29.9 for the sellers, 25.7 for the buyers. Not that much supply here, so yeah, if you can buy these, look at the entire chart here, 25.7, definitely below the entire chart. Perhaps you can afford to buy a couple of Ares. Basilisk ticking in for another 1 year low, very close to 230 million ISK, 229 for the sellers, 217 for the buyers. The 217, let's see if I can pull that. Here is 210, so yeah, that does feel like a pretty low price below the entire chart. It's a possibility, considering this downtrend here in the last couple of days. Yeah, Basilisk, in my opinion, is a buy order potential. Cerberus coming back quite nicely, but still below average. 250 million, so 242 for the sellers, 232 million for the sellers, and 225 for the buyers is still quite low. But not the 1 year low point. The Crow also dipping below average here, 27.5 on the chart, 28.5 for the sellers and 26.2 for the buyers. So I think the Ares is more pronounced when it comes to the buy opportunity. The gap between buyers and sellers is bigger there than the Basilisk at that 1 year low point so far. The Guardian, I tried to buy a couple. I'm not sure if I succeeded. We'll have to check that later, but 228 for the sellers now and 200 million for the buyers. And if I look at the ticker, I try to buy Guardians at 199. So here I think, let's see if I can spot. Yeah, I think I didn't pick this up. I tried to grab this one here, and I basically I think might have pulled the trigger on new buyers starting to compete at 200 million, unfortunately. So I don't think that one will work out, but I tried to grab one for less than 200 million ISK. If you look at this entire chart, that would have been a really good buy. Next up, we have the Heretic staying below average, but nothing too much to say here. 70 million for the sellers, 60 million for the buyers. Decent margin, that is true. But the volumes are, in my opinion, too small to gamble on. The Hound, after a nice sell opportunity last week of around 40 to 45 million ISK, is now on its way back down. 32 million for the sellers, 31 million for the buyers. Definitely not in buyer territory either, but your sell opportunity is over. Next up, we have the Ishtar 1-year low point heading for 230 million for the sellers. And look at that, first one's coming in for less than that, and 219 for the buyers. Yeah, 1-year low point. I think Ishtar, like the Basilisk, potentially you can try to grab a really cheap one there for a trade. Manticore also jumped up to 40 million, stabilizing now 36 million for the sellers, 33.6 million for the buyers. That is again in the middle of going back down in price, and definitely not at the low point of 30 million yet. Munin slowly going back down as well. I think I would put the Munin at less than average now, breaking through 250 million ISK. If you look at 200 million as a buy opportunity, we're getting close to that. 204 for the buyers, 238 for the sellers. Nemesis just stable at 30 million. That's unfortunate. Oops, sorry. 30 million for the sellers, 27 million for the buyers. I would have hoped that the Nemesis could again play with 25 million on the buy orders. That would be a very nice price point to jump in on some of those. Oniros flat at the 1-year low point of 180 million. Here buyers at 166. Obviously it's a very cheap price for the Oniros, but the problem for that one is of course the volumes. It's a pretty big gamble to take. I prefer a more popular one like Guardian, like Basilisk, to try the trade on a, there we go, on a logistics cruiser. Purifier, all right, sell opportunity all of a sudden, jumping up to 40 million ISK. So the action is obviously in the stealth bombers here. 41 million for the sellers, 36 million for the buyers. Nice sell opportunity for some purifiers, and here in October you can see that we probably could have grabbed some for 26-27 million. So that's a very nice trade that could have been made. I haven't made it, but yeah, look out for that stealth bomber action. That still seems to be the name of the game. I think here what could be happening is that Nullsec is theorizing that stealth bomber fleets might be the thing for blowing away these structures, the new structures in Nullsec. Next up, we've got Saber, stable at a slightly below average price, but there's also not much to say here. Scimitar pretty flat at 230 million, so not the 1-year low point. Buyers at 214. No, it's not as good in my opinion as a Basilisk. And then finally we've got the Stiletto. Ooh, that is interesting. That is definitely down in price. Here has some momentum down. If this is correct, 27 million, then we are at a 1-year low point. 27.3 million for the sellers, 25.7 million for the buyers, and the lack of buyers is pretty obvious. I would say, yep, Stiletto also potentially in a buy opportunity right here. If you try to grab them for, let's say, 26 to 27 million, you definitely have something that's below the entire chart, and then you have to hope for interceptors getting used as well. A spike up to 30, 35, 40 million would be pretty damn awesome. So alright, in the Tech 2 market I'm seeing Stiletto, I'm seeing Ishtar pretty low, I'm seeing Basilisk pretty low, and I'm seeing action in the stealth bombers here. So very, very interesting Tech 2 week, I would say. Some nice opportunities, and some, you know, if you're in the know on Nullsec and you know that indeed stealth bombers are gonna be the thing to try and get rid of the new flex structures, and then if there might be a war, who knows? This could be a sign that people are preparing for that too. Next up, we have the Tech 3 ships at 37.55. Like that. Let's take a look at these. So most of them were on their way back up. I didn't see massive oversupply, except I think in the Hecate that still had like a couple hundred on the sell orders. Here is the Confessor, stable at around 40 million ISK at the moment, 39.9 million for the sellers. Look at the volumes, nothing too crazy. Buyers are up to 36.4 million. So if you haven't already, sell the Confessors that you bought for 30 million. You know, it's pretty nice increase in price here. The Hecate is going back down in price to 40 million though, from 45 to 40 million. 41.9 million for the sellers and 37 million for the buyers. Again, it's a bit more, right? The Hecate on its way back down because it was the best selling or the highest selling tactical destroyer last week, so it's normal that you see more supply. But the good news is 10, 58, 24, 30, 30. it's not 200, it's not 400. So this is gonna normally keep the price in check a little bit. Next up, we've got the Jackdaw, also flat at 40 million ISK here. And look at the volumes again, nothing too crazy. 40 million for the sellers, 48, 14, 16, 21. That's all quite okay. 37.2 million for the sellers. So here again, if you manage to grab some close to 30 million, which you could have done in October, then this would probably be an okay time to sell. Or if you know about Nasdaq action, of course, then you might want to wait a little bit. I think I tried to sell. The Zwepels here next, you know, you could have bought these for less than 30 million ISK. Unfortunately, not as popular as the rest. 37 million for the sellers though. It's quite a bit of a profit to be taken there. 33 million for the buyers, and again look at the volumes, nothing too crazy at all there either. So the tactical destroyers up in price a little bit. Definitely, in my opinion, a sell opportunity if you manage to time the bottoms correctly. And yeah, no sign of that massive oversupply in the tactical destroyer market this week at all. The Legion next, let's take a look at that one. So these are the cruisers, of course, back to an average price here, on the up turn in the last couple of weeks. 163 million for the sellers, 146 for the buyers. Look at the volumes here, nothing too crazy either. So average price, not oversupplied, is again the name of the game for the Legion. Then we've got the Loki, after reaching an above average price of 250, is now back down just a little bit towards an average price here yet again. 220 for the sellers, 200 million for the buyers. And again, looking at the volumes, quite a bit of supply in the last 24 hours, but quite carefully, couple of ships, nothing too major, definitely not massively oversupplied as what we'd seen sometimes here September, October, and even on some other opportunities, especially here in the destroyers, of course. Look at that July-August chart, then look at the Hecate here again, July-August, very, very low. There we had hundreds and hundreds of ships on the market. That seems to be over. And yeah, we're basically back at average prices for the cruisers now as well. Here is the Proteus, actually a bit of a breakout for the Proteus, heading for 180 million ISK. 180 for the sellers, 167 to 168 for the buyers. And look at the volumes here, definitely nothing too crazy. Unfortunately here, 50 a day, not that great. I think if you look at the Loki, yeah, about 200 a day. So there's definitely the least popular ship, but a nice little spike here for the Proteus. If you bought them at 130, you have a sell opportunity, of course. And then the Tengu also settling at 180 here, 170. No, that's kind of weird. The chart is telling me 180, but the sellers are coming in now at 173.4 million ISK, buyers at 166. And again, looking at the volumes, we don't have anything too crazy. So it looks like for the Tech 3 market, we are back to what I would call normal prices, average prices, okay to sell. Okay to gamble on higher prices here, but your buy opportunities, which did exist throughout the summer, are over at this point. This is the time to look for those sell opportunities with the ships that you risked buying. And that's exactly what I've been doing in the last week as well. So maybe I'll quickly go over the ticker here first, or no, first we'll take a look at the Navy battleships. That's going to be at 42.35. The reason I want to look at these is because I think CCP Rise mentioned on Twitter, I think that's how I spotted it through Reddit, that CCP is adding BPCs for these. Apparently that's a change. So faction battleships, Navy factions. Let's take a look at that. Here we have the Apocalypse Navy issue. That is back to an average price. Look at the volumes though in the last couple of days. All of a sudden, that is definitely above average. And so we are selling for 429 million and buyers at 395. So I think you can correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, of course, but that they're basically adding blueprint copies for these battleships, or for some of these battleships, to the stores, to the LP stores from Faction Warfare, which in my opinion is super interesting because it basically puts these battleships a bit closer to that relationship between what's happening in Faction Warfare, who is winning they usually have really cheap ships. Who is losing, they usually have very expensive ships, so great sell opportunities. And that is a market that that is actually very, very interesting in its predictability, in the relationship between what's happening in the game and what's happening on the market here. So here for the Apocalypse Navy issue, we can, for instance, see really low prices in June and then high prices in September. So in this period we should have seen the Amar getting pushed back by the main Matar in faction warfare, and at the moment it looks like they're making a bit of a comeback and we're back at the 50-50 range for the Apocalypse Navy issue. Next up we have the Armageddon Navy issue, and that one is really flat. So am I correct in assuming that it's the Armageddon Navy issue that doesn't have BPCs in the LP store? You can also see the lack of volumes, and if they add them here, what we should hopefully start to see is that the Armageddon Navy issue will become more plentiful, more available, perhaps lower in price, but also potentially we might see that wavy motion together with faction warfare on this ship as well. So here we have the Dominic's Navy issue for the Galente, which seems to be pretty low at the moment at 400 million ISK, spike up to 800 million ISK, 423 for the sellers, 390 for the buyers. I would say that this is a buy opportunity, and this is an indication that the Galente are currently doing really well in faction warfare. And then we've got a far more stable Megatron Navy issue. I'm not sure. This one actually seems the same pattern here with a high point at 630. And currently at a pretty low point, 410 for the sellers, 334 for the buyers. That's a really wide margin. That's a very cheap Megatron Navy issue. It might be worth it to try and grab some of those, but you can also see that the volumes here are quite different. Well, actually Dominic's Navy issues, well, no, it's definitely double the volumes for the Megatron Navy issue. Next up here we get the Raven Navy issue. If the Dominic's is low, then the Raven should be high, and that's exactly what's happening. A low point of 400 million ISK, high point now of 550 million ISK here, 557 for the sellers, 500 million for the buyers. That is what I do love about this one, this market. If I had a bit more time, I think that I would do exactly the same thing as Marquis Dragon, put some alts in the 4 faction warfare factions and then try to see what's happening, join their fights, and depending on what's happening, right, grab your own LP, sell at the right time. Things like that can be really very, very good ISK in my opinion. Man, it's that I think about it, I mean, it's really a time problem for me, but that would be another goal that I should put down, right? You get an L structure. That's definitely something that I want to do at some point in the right place with the right structure, something that I'm willing to lose. But then after that, this faction warfare markets and the faction warfare activities in EVE Online are really awesome, and I think are really alpha clone friendly potentially. So why not try that? It's a possibility. I need to think it over, mull it over a little bit, to see if maybe I should plan to try and get that going. Scorpion Navy issue, same pattern at the moment. Bottom here 400 million ISK and back up in price. And then we've got the with the Apocalypse actually going down. This is really weird here. Tempest Navy issue actually at a 1-year low point or very close to that. Perhaps the Typhoon Navy issue jumping up in price. That makes more sense. Typhoon Navy issue here, jump up in price to 450 as the Apocalypse Navy issue goes back down in price. And then perhaps the Tempest Navy issue still has like a bit of a backlog, that there's still plenty of them on the market to keep the price low at the moment, but that eventually they'll dry up, and then we can expect higher prices for this ship at some point, which means that, let's take a look at that, sellers 282, buyers 241. If you still manage to grab one, let's say for below 250 million ISK, if we can get that on the chart right here, not bad potentially, knowing that what's coming, this is not bad. This is potentially actually a good trade here for the Tempest fleet issue. But I don't know enough about what's actually happening in faction warfare to actually know or be able to predict all too well what's gonna happen here. But it's definitely one of those very interesting mechanics that unfortunately doesn't know enough love from CCP either. I do think that CCP should look into that a little bit more, but that has really awesome potential for your ISK making, and to combine something that is PvP oriented and that can combine and that you can combine very well with the market. So I really like it, yeah, there should be blueprint copies for battleships or something like that coming to the LP store for faction warfare. Something to look into. Definitely something that I'm making a mental note at this point. Is that something I should just pull the trigger, put in the effort, make 1 or 2 accounts, start those characters, and have some fun with faction warfare. It's possible, but as I've said, it's mostly a time issue. And then to end the video here, I'll take a look at the ticker, because I think I tried some purchases as well. Construction blocks for less than 10,000 ISK is what I tried to do. Is my order still visible here? I think it's gonna be this one. Although I don't think I did 10,000 rounds. I'm not exactly sure, but this might be me, and unfortunately then it will not have worked. Full rights 839, I think I got those. Guardian 199, as I've said, that was my attempt to grab a cheap Guardian, but that did not succeed. Last week, integrity response drones bought for 2.1 million, sold for 3 million, so that was a pretty good trade, I think. And then this Vapel at 29 million, did I sell it? I'm not sure, I'd need to check, but yeah, there is a little bit of movement that I did. And then the tungsten carbide actually that I bought at 178, now going for 186. So I think I did pretty well with buying some tungsten carbide at 178 there. I'm trying to grab some cheap construction blocks. I think I failed. Same thing with the Guardian. These are 2 buys that I tried to do last week, but I did sell integrity response drones at a nice profit as well. And we'll see. I need to also, I think, put a bit more effort into like writing down my trades, seeing what's successful, what's not, and finding a way to add that into the ticker section here, so I can keep you guys up to date. Maybe I should do like asked and then bought or something like that added here at the back of it. So also still more work to do. So yeah, there's definitely potential for EVE Talk to grow, to become better, and for that faction warfare stuff as well. Still so much stuff to do in EVE Online, but next week, of course, it's the expansion that is going to be my focus. And that's going to be it for this week, guys. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.